Hey everybody! It's the one and only bird, Michael Furtico. And before we get to today's countdown, we need to talk about parallel universes. I'm just kidding. Sorta. When a new world champion is crowned, they lead the scene for the next year, define the new trends or put an end to the old ones. And for good reason. These players define a cultural moment in the Yo-Yo community for all of us, and rank among the greatest of all time. But the story of World Champion's influence is consistent and obvious. Not to take anything away from anyone who ever earned the gold, of course, but today we're taking a look at something a little bit less discussed, a little bit more under the radar. A lot of the time, the margins deciding who gets which placement can be pretty small, and as time presses forward, the numbers on the score sheet can feel less meaningful, but the ideas and emotions at the core of the performances on that stage really stick with us. Sometimes the second place routines contribute just as much to the metagame and to the values of the Yo-Yo community at large. And it can be hard not to imagine the alternate timelines where the final standings were oh so slightly different. But with these routines, I feel like their legacies as art are not marred by the silver. So today, we are counting down the top 5 second place 1A freestyles at the World Yo-Yo Championship ever. A lot of numbers in that sentence. Anyway, as always, these are just my opinions, but don't worry, I know a lot about second place. Here we go. Number 5, Andrew Bergen 2017. This is, I think, a perfect example of a performance where the effect it had on people's hearts and minds goes way beyond what was on the score sheet. Shion had already won in 2016, and he blew us away with his repeat victory, but that also left some ideological space for someone else to come in and make a statement, show us that the metagame was moving in other directions too. Bergie was the one who did that. There was a time, really not too long ago, where combos like these simply were not done in contest. Seriously. Even as recently as 2015, you didn't really see combos that used slacks and whips in this way, or to this extent, and certainly not on a large scale. But these days, it's probably the dominant style in competitive play. I mean, when someone talks about meta tricks, don't you think of something along these lines? Other people were flirting with combos like these in 2017, and Andrew had been doing them for years already. But this was the true proof of concept. This was the first time so many of them had been done so elegantly, so cleanly and confidently, and we all got to see just how this approach could stack up against the rest of the world. Pretty dang well. Even today, few have the same intuitive feel in how they construct their combos or flair in executing them. Bergie took second in prelims at Worlds 2011, and ever since then, I knew he had it in him to go all the way to the top. The fact that when he actually did it, it was set to such an ethereal, otherworldly piece of music made it feel really special, like some fateful promise was being fulfilled at last. This is one of the defining showings in the current era of Yo-Yo, and I think the scene is better for it. Number 4, Sebastian Brock 2011. Try and imagine what it would look like if someone were to place second at Worlds 2021 using a Weezer song. Now imagine that that's the most beautifully choreographed and executed performance of the whole event. I really don't have a mental image for what that would look like, but this was exactly what it looked like 1 decade earlier. I'm not sure if that's because the game has changed so much since 2011, or if it's because no one other than Sebi ever could have pulled it off. Probably a little of both. However you explain it, I'm not sure we will ever see another routine like this. I think a lot of people would call this the ultimate Sebastian performance, and for good reason. The pacing and composition of every combo and the freestyle as a whole are just immaculate. The use of space and body tricks is unbelievably tasteful, and he even fits in a couple little winks at the audience. This dude rocked the baby on the way to a World's podium finish. Who does that? After 2011, the judging system shifted to something with more of an emphasis on cleanliness, performance, and presentation. While there were many reasons for the update, it's hard not to see some sort of connection between that revision and this freestyle. Viewed through that lens, this could actually be considered the most impactful second place routine there ever was. But even without that, it deserves a spot on this list for sure. I think my favorite part of this one is that no one ever approached bangers the same way as Sebi, before or after. Seriously, he turned trapeze, of all things, into a monster crowd pleaser. What more do you want? Number 3, Takeshi Matsuura 2018. In Shanghai, the living legend, multi-division threat, threw down what I think most would consider his master work. Front to back, this is one of the most densely packed 1A freestyles of all time. Difficulty, innovation, uniqueness, energy, cleanliness, Sean Paul, whatever you could possibly want to see from such a titan of Yoyo, Takeshi delivered with this one. What really gets me about this performance is the contrast between the music and the trick set. No lie makes it feel like the after party is already starting. Everyone gets to relax and let loose, but Takeshi is laser focused up there. The hardest working man in Yoyo, at least for these 3 minutes. I really regret not having gotten to be in the audience for this one live. Takeshi has an unmatched ability to immediately win over any crowd purely by the strength and character of his tricks. That, combined with the overall vibe of this freestyle, seriously, is there a single yo-yoer who doesn't love Sean Paul? And Takeshi's super confident stage presence pushed this one absolutely over the top. He had us all in the palm of his hand. The slack combo is a particular highlight. Few tricks have ever earned instant classic status like this, and it has to go down as one of the best combos ever debuted on the world stage. But you could easily argue that any piece of this routine is the best trick on display here. I'm sure there's going to be some controversy that this is so low on the list, and I absolutely want to hear your opinions in the comments, but please do hear me out on the 2 ranked above this. Believe me, the margins between them are not so big. And I do think that every single person who's witnessed this routine, whether that was live from the crowd, on the stream, or anytime since on YouTube, can all agree on one thing. It truly was lit that night. Number 2, Yuuki Spencer, 2005. The first thing that comes to mind when I think about Yuuki Spencer is raw talent. There is a character archetype in stories of sports and competition, both fictional and real, of the natural. Someone who has such an innate gift in a given discipline that they can rise to the top of the top without even trying. Their baseline intuition and game sense are stronger than what most others could ever hope to learn or be taught. I don't know much about Yuuki's particular practice habits, but this is perfectly the energy he exudes. The way he jokes around on stage before the music starts, or performs the most casual, fun yo-yo switch in the history of the toy, you'd think he was just messing around up there if every single element he threw down was not pure, solid gold. This performance makes you believe that he could do just as well if he hadn't practiced for a month and just rolled out of bed. There was an astounding amount of charisma, mastery, and mythos baked into this one. And that's not even getting into the actual yo-yoing. Yuuki won Trick Innovator of the Year in 2005, I think largely based on this routine and how it pushed regens, zoning, and body tricks in ways that other people were not thinking about at the time. But if I'm being honest, what makes this an absolute classic, at least in my eyes, is just that classic Yuuki style. Every yo-yo player since 2005 has taken some influence from this freestyle, one way or another. This performance basically wrote the book on broadly accepted ideas of what cool yo-yoing looked like in America for years to follow. And while many more pages have been added since, I would say that these have not faded at all. There's a real magic in the particular placements of Yuuki's hands, the double taps, the rhythms he gets into as he moves through mounts, the ways he breaks up the tech with little bangers and cool ideas here and there. He's the only one who could do so much and make it look so casual. This is probably the definitive, ultimate second place freestyle of all time. But there's one more that I just can't deny. Also, one of my absolute favorite idiosyncrasies of the Yoyo community will always be that we all love Thunderbirds Are Go by Busted, without question. And our shared memory of this performance is what makes that true. Before I unveil my choice for number 1, here are some honorable mentions. Tomonari Ishiguro, 2004. This is perhaps the most iconic contest routine by the performer better known as Black, and he was way ahead of the game in 2004 in terms of stage presence, choreography, and aesthetic cohesion. Plus, his particular style of super smooth execution and clean composition is a joy to watch even today. Just from this, it's not difficult to believe that he ended up performing in Cirque du Soleil. Hiroyuki Suzuki, 2008. This is one of my all-time favorite Mickey routines. It is a shockingly clean run, perfectly executed, and there is a palpable energy behind everything he does. More than a decade later, that under the leg combo still really sticks with me. Honestly, I think I compare every leg trick that I see against this one, even now. This easily could have made the list, but it somehow felt like including a 4-time world champ was sort of contrary to the spirit of the thing. Evan Nagao, 2019. The swan song of Evan's competitive career is, without a doubt, one of the most beautiful yo-yo freestyles I've ever seen. There have been plenty of emotional performances on the contest stage, but I'm not sure we've ever seen anyone else bare their soul like this. He wrote and performed the song himself and built a routine around it with a pretty unheard of level of choreography, not to mention risk and difficulty. Being in the audience, this one felt like a moment we were all experiencing with Evan, and you need to see it for yourself or rewatch it if it's been a while. It kills me not to put this one on the list proper. Number 1. Remember back in my introduction, the question about parallel universes and what could have been? With most of these routines, their lasting influence is clear to me. But there is one performance that I can't help but wonder about, one freestyle that I don't think caught on in quite the same way, one player who was a top contender for years, but who people didn't necessarily follow in the same way. And I don't think that there was any distaste or lack of reverence for this player's style or tricks. If anything, it's the opposite. His approach may have been too difficult, too explosive, truly beyond imitation, no matter what titles he might have held. But I wish we could see what effects a world's win by him may have yielded, whether it's a drastically different approach to hard tricks, or just the proof that no one else could do it like him. Because this just so happens to be my favorite player and freestyle of all time. That's right. The greatest second place routine ever done is Christopher Chia, 2013. It's possible that I'm blinded by being such a fan, but I have never seen anyone come close to emulating Christopher Chia's style. Which is kind of absurd when you realize that he was at the absolute top of the competitive scene for at least 4 full years. Chia's style appears to be effortlessly innovative. As far as I can tell, he's not bound by any implicit, assumed rules on how a yo-yo interacts with planes, zoning, or laws of physics. No one else could have turned Shoot the Moon into a world-level, meta-influential 1A trick. And he does it all with a presentation that feels more like the archetype of a speed player, rather than the aesthetics we might typically associate with that sort of boundary-pushing creativity. I can't think of another player who found this sweet spot and had it both ways like this. Every element he throws down is so meaningful and important to the routine as a whole. I think he probably performs fewer actual moves with the yo-yo than almost anyone competing on this level, but every single one demands your full attention. There are so many fiery bangers coming at a breakneck pace. Even his front style combo has a real poetry to the way it's executed and choreographed. This was where Christopher started performing to Cruella, and their screaming synths and Party Till We're Dead vibes could not pair better with his approach to Yoyo. Come and Get It is a tough song to match the energy of, but Chia makes it feel like it's Cruella who have to try to keep up with him. This is probably a spoiler for a video I'll get to eventually, but I can't go without touching on it here. The UFO regen in this freestyle is an easy contender for the best banger ever shown off on a yo-yo. Christopher Chia brought one-of-a-kind competitive philosophy to the stage, and this routine is my favorite from his resume. From my perspective, no one else ever went as hard or made Yo-Yo look as cool as Chris did. And at least in this timeline, I don't think anyone else ever will or could. That's why he's my easy choice for the first place, second place Yo-Yo performance of all time. Also, seriously, did anyone ever learn this horizontal slack trick? Does this make any sense to any of you? If so, please explain it to me and show me how. And I just want to make clear, this video is not trying to make any arguments about who should have won or take anything away from any of the first place winners. Every World Yo-Yo champion that I've seen perform or met in person has been not only an incredible player, but a fantastic person too. My goal with this video is just to raise some interesting conversations and maybe lift up a few players who don't get quite as much attention. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for pointing your face at this, and I'll see you again in the next one. But for now, I've gotta fly. Thank you to Yo-Yo Video Archive, Yo-Yo Factory, Duncan Toys, Dr. Mario, World Yo-Yo Contest 2008 Video Unofficial, and C3 Yo-Yo Design for all the clips used in this video. What are your favorite second place freestyles, worlds or otherwise? Do you agree with my picks? Tell me down below in the comments how much higher I should have put Takeshi. Maybe like and subscribe while you're there. Follow me on Instagram, bird.mp3. For some of the videos I've got coming up, I'm going to be asking for a little bit of help, and Instagram is how I'm going to do it, so you might want to follow me to stay in the loop. Thanks again.